welcome back for another week of our This Travel Tribe podcast. So today we are lucky enough to have a guest here with us. Her name is Rikimah Glymph, and she is going to be sharing some really great, basic things that I think are perfect for every family planning a vacation. And that we're going to be talking about how to pick a really great destination for your family, and then how do you find really fun, cool activities to do with your family while you're in the destination. Now, I think that it's going to be perfect because Rikimah is a travel planner, and so she has a lot of experience, but she's also traveled with her son for years. I believe she's been to 120 countries. She can clarify if that's not right, but I mean, she's done a lot of traveling. So I know she has a lot of knowledge to share with us today. So before we get in and get into all the details of planning and finding cool stuff, you want to just take a minute and introduce yourself?
Yeah, Lisa, thank you so much for having me on. This is exciting, as I was saying right before we got on, because I've been traveling my entire life, and I feel like most people who know me, they will say she's living and breathing travel every day. Every day she's waking up. So this is great. My name is Rikimah Glymph, and it is true 121 with Jamaica this time around. And so that's the number of countries that I have been to. My son, who is 12, just made 73. And so that probably gives, I think, a little bit of a visual to what we've been up to his entire life.
Yeah.
And in terms of, just work that we do, I mean, we do lots of different things. I've been traveling since I was well into my teens. Sometimes it was for work, sometimes it was for pleasure, sometimes it was because I was going to go find myself. And these days, it's because I want to make sure that my son knows that the world, anywhere in the world, can be home. In addition to, I want him to be learning a lot about just other cultures and where he fits in, and what his global, what is his purpose in terms of what is he supposed to be giving back to the global experience at large. So we both, and I say we, so if you ever hear me say we, I'm talking about my little mini my child.
All right.
But we run an organization, so we're franchise owners for cruise planners. And when we are not doing that, we also do and conduct wellness retreats all over the world. And so our travel, like I said, has been personal, but it's also been work related. And because of that, and because of how much we've been traveling, we said, you know what, we need a travel agency. We should just go ahead and get involved with one of the biggest that people know, they trust, that has systems set up to make it easy for everyone, so that we can make it full circle, so that we can continue to live our own purpose, which is all things travel, all things international, all things giving back, and sharing the knowledge as we get it. So thank you for having us.
I'm so happy to have you. And I love that, I mean, you are all about travel, just always traveling, thinking about traveling. So it's going to be fun today. I'm excited to learn about how you narrow down where you're going to travel. Now, it sounds like sometimes it's for work, right? So it's like a wellness retreat. So obviously you're going to travel to that destination. But let's think about more like your family travel.
That's right.
How do you go about kind of narrowing down choices and then making a final decision on where you want to go?
That's a good one. So before my son was old enough to be opinionated, I used to walk across and do lots of research around just different keywords. Most kid-friendly country, country with the most kid-friendly hikes, right? So I was doing lots and lots of Google searches on things that were surrounding the types of activities we love doing. My son is a kid who used to do gymnastics, who loves parkour. So sometimes we even are looking for countries that specialize in parkour. Maybe that's not going to take me to sub-Saharan Africa, but it will take me to France. It's going to take me to the UK. It's going to take me to Canada, right? And so over the years, I've tried to look at him and say, all right, kiddo, what's the thing that's going to bring you the most joy while we're overseas? And I do myself that. Rikimah, what do you want to get out of each country you go to? If it's, I need warmth, then I know I'm going to warm countries, and that already excludes lots and lots of countries.
Right.
Even this time around, we were just in Jamaica. And the way that I chose that is I said, I need lots of vitamin D. I need lots of warmth. I need music in the streets, and I need delicious food. And it can't be too far away because I got to get back because we are in the midst of East Coast wintry experiences, right? And that already relegated me to a handful of countries,
Mhm.
not more than 6 hours away, right? And I also was looking to make sure I didn't enter into a country that was struggling with things like sargassum, which is that the seaweed that comes up on the shore in some of these countries throughout the Gulf, and also some parts of Africa too, and the Caribbean, because my son is allergic to grass
Oh,
things, all these
okay.
things. So we're also tracking weather patterns because we know that once that stuff hits the environment, it'll be blooming lots and lots of sargassum. We're not going to go into regions like that, right? So a lot of times we'll take a look, we'll sit down, and we'll talk about it. Son, what are you mostly excited for? What do you want to be doing while we're away? If the answer is nothing, then I know all I need is a beach for him. And that could be anywhere in the world. But a lot of times he comes with a long list. When he was younger, I also wanted to make sure I was in places that had hospitals that we could get to in the event he was injured. What you'll realize as you travel is not all hospitals are cut the same way. So if you go into the Caribbean, for example, in some of the countries that are not as resourced, you're going to get hospitals that don't have things like basic air conditioning.
Mm.
Well, if you've got an asthmatic kid and you also like those, those types of amenities, maybe you're not going into places like that with a kid who gets sick easily,
Yeah.
right? For me, my son was immune compromised very early. So it was important to go into places where we could get medical treatment, where we had reliable transportation. If I can't get Uber or Lyft within a country, I need to be in a country where it's not going to cost me a lot to have a driver, for example.
Hmm.
Right. So those are some of the ways that we try to narrow down where we think we might want to go and why.
Okay, those are all such good factors. I think a lot of people might not even have thought of a lot of those, right? Like hospitals or allergies or those different kinds of things that when you're traveling with kids, that could really make or break the vacation, right?
That's
Yeah,
that's
and I love how you would just get on and do a Google search on a thing that your kid loves, right? Just like parkour. Where is parkour really fun? And what, and just then
my
plan a
grandson.
trip around it. Yeah,
That's
yeah. But I also like that you said sometimes if he didn't care, like you did what you wanted to do, right? Which I think is important as parents to also think about ourselves because, we want to be doing things that we also enjoy. And so it's good to kind of have balance, like letting the kids have some say and then the parents have some say. And really, no matter where you go, you're going to have a great time. I believe that. So,
that's
I mean, it's not like you're going to choose the wrong destination, right?
that's
It's like we just got back from this Christmas market trip where we went around Europe to a bunch of different places. And there are so many places that you can go. Like, it's overwhelming. And so I took a long time narrowing down our itinerary. And I finally just had to tell myself, like, it's okay. Like, everywhere we go is great. Whatever you miss is fine. Like, it'll be there for another time. Um, and so I think it's just good to keep in mind that no matter what you pick, it's going to be amazing.
that's
Yeah. Okay. So those are really great tips on just picking where you're going. Now, we've kind of talked about it a little bit, but I'd love to hear more about how you find really fun, cool things to do in the destination. Like once you've decided, hey, we're going to go to Jamaica or we're going to go to, Puerto Rico or whatever it is.
that's right.
How do you kind of narrow down what activities it is that you want to do while you're there?
That's right. That's right. So it starts with us making a list ourselves. And like I said, I am one to openly communicate. This time around, we traveled with 7 other family members. And so if you can imagine, that's talking to grandpa, that's talking to my sister, all of her children, right? And we made a list that way. And then I still did that research. One of the things that I love to do is go down a rabbit hole with the research thing. Love, love, love to go explore what are the best things to do in Jamaica? What are the top kid things to do in Jamaica? Where are the top 10 places that are better for kids, right? Like, I could have gone to Ocho Rios, but I chose Negril and, in Montego Bay because they have way more liveliness happening. In the event that I choose the spa or the ocean, the kids still have a party waiting to happen for them, right? And so I'll still do that country research. And then one step further is I am notorious for 2 things. Either staying in hotels that have concierges that I immediately connect with before I'm in the country, because they always have a long list of stuff that you do as a tourist, as an expat, and then as a local. there's always 3 categories that are very, very available. The second thing I do is if I'm not in a hotel, and maybe I'm in an Airbnb, right? Because there's some countries that I would prefer an Airbnb any day. I'm going to ask the host, hey, do you have a guidebook? Because
That's a great
normally
idea.
the hosts have guidebooks, and if they don't, we help them create one along the way.
There you go. I like that.
And so we always end up getting recommendations from hosts. We always end up getting firm recommendations from concierge. We've done our own research, and then we also come with our own list of things we want to do. And then, funny enough, my son and I, we rock paper scissors at that. So we'll pick our top 10, and then we will prioritize them. What's the first thing that absolutely has to happen?
Mm-hmm.
And if the last thing happens, it's not going to be the end of the world, right? Like that's what we're going to hold for last. And then we try to be methodical about not stressing ourselves out along the way, but making sure that we plan out so that every day we've got time for a thing. We've got time for the pool and the beach. We've got time for bum laying out on the cabanas and for reading a book. Those are our top 4 things that has to happen each day. And that's what we try to do. So that's some of the ways that we'll end up getting lists of things to do, and then we'll try to, be democratic about how we choose to prioritize the things.
Yeah, I love that. So a lot of them then I guess are just personal preference. Like I want a zip line, and so you pick that, or horseback riding or whatever. Does budget come into that, or how do you kind of work around budget with your preferences?
Yeah, this is right. So early on, we had to be very budget conscious because we were traveling in countries where we thought it would be lower costs being there, and then we got there only to realize that they were actually more expensive than even the country we live in. So as a formal example is Barbados. Barbados is one of my favorite countries in the whole wide world. But Barbados is actually quite expensive. Those folks, for a traditional 2-bedroom apartment on the beach, you're still paying $5,000 to $6,000 a month. So, and you think about it and you say, well, but the typical person working in Barbados isn't making that money.
No.
So you wouldn't assume that that's what you would run into, but it certainly is what you'll run into for folks who are traveling specifically. And so what we had to do is we had to start doing that research early on too. And that was about asking questions. Like, I'm not going to book a tour if if the concierges don't say, hey, Rikimah, this is the firm amount it's going to cost you, and then communicate that in front of me, whether it's on the phone or over email. Because the other thing that happens once you get localized is people like to play with money. And so they'll say, yeah, we know the hotels say that, but that was a mistake. They didn't give you the right number, right? And so I'm always making sure that everything is crossing over. It's one of the reasons why I love to book things through the hotels or through the Airbnb hosts, as opposed to by myself, right? Because by myself I look like a tourist who's waiting to have a touristy experience.
Exactly.
So that's how we try to keep the budget low. The other thing is that if we go in and say, look, we only have $1,000 to spend, that also will help us to dwindle down the list depending on how many people are with us. Some tours are going to cost you $20, $30. Other tours are going to cost you $200. Right. And so if we only have 1,000, maybe $200 tour is not going to be in. And we may have to sort of sacrifice that trip and say, we'll get to it next time once we save some more money. The other alternative is when you're doing advanced planning, how much money do I need to save in order for me to be comfortable on this trip? And so a lot of it, like for me, I'm an impulse trip goer. So I don't, if I plan it out, chances are by the day I get there, I'm not going to want to go to the same country because I have to lose my spirit once we go. Whereas my sister is a big planner. And so she'll say, look, I knew I was going to Montego Bay 6 months ago. So I've been saving for the last 6 months, a couple $100 a month. And she's got several kids and stuff. So, right. So it means less Starbucks coffees, less fast food experiences to conserve. And then she'll tell her kids, look, this is the budget we've got. And we're going to do whatever we can within that, but we're not going above that. So if we realize that the tours are costing more, we may inject more beach time. We may add more pool time, right? Especially when you stay in all-inclusives, which are some of my favorite. That takes away the idea of worrying about food or eating, off-site or something. And instead we can put everything at tours. So I think there are several different ways we try to address that. We were budget conscious this time, so we managed to stay at all-inclusive, resorts where everything was already a part of the price. So we could get on top of that part. The thing that became the variable was if we wanted outside tours or if we wanted to eat offsite on the property. And that felt more manageable for the budget we were working.
Right. And the all-inclusive lets you know pretty much ahead of time what you're going to
That's
be
right.
paying. And you could
That's,
choose to not do anything outside of that.
that's
And
right.
it would still be great.
That's right.
But I like how you consider the money. And I just think, obviously, like, money's kind of like the least fun part of traveling, but it's kind of one of the most important parts at the same time. So I think it's good to address that and talk about that.
The other thing too is for people who do travel, if they do have credit cards and things of that nature, I am all about traveling on miles, for example. I have points that I accrue when I'm traveling, when I'm not traveling. And so I never spend more than what I've got in my bank account. Let me be clear about that part, right? Like, we're not overspending. But it does mean that every time I'm spending a dollar on anything, I'm always actively thinking, how can I bank those points? Because I know at some point I'm going to want to take a trip. And so actually, this last time around, our trip was paid all from points because
That's
we
awesome.
legitimately got accrued points throughout the year. And so really the cost was more about what we did locally and not even the hotel. So the other thing is, while I'm not a person who loves to say, go get yourself a credit card, I am a person to say, but if you're going to have one, let it work for you so that you can get those points so it can offset some of those costs later.
Absolutely. It can make a big difference. Just even if you get free flights, right? And then you don't, that takes a huge piece of the puzzle out if you're going to fly to your destination. Now, you've talked about a lot of like the personal things that you do when you're planning a trip. So I think those are the things that all of us could do. Now, I know that you are also a travel planner. And so I'd love to just talk a little bit about, what are the advantages and maybe even disadvantages to using a travel planner for families planning a vacation?
I mean, well, if I'm putting myself in the shoes of families, right, because I was a person with a young child very early on, one of the advantages is the stress. Most people find it stressful to have to do all that research, right? I mean, most people don't have time to do the level of research to create that type of trip that they really want. And the truth is a lot of people struggle with even just doing research, plainly, keywords, right, on a very basic level. And so I get asked all the time, well, what keywords do you put into the search engine? Like, how did you pull up 5 different lists, even though this is just about one thing? And it's like, well, it's how we talk to the internet. It's how we say what we're looking for, right? The other thing is that when you work with a travel agent, we're able to put people on payment plans. That's probably the biggest thing that I would say. If you're buying travel on your own, everything has to be paid up front, right? Like, you're given that card right then and there. When you work with a travel agent, you have an opportunity to pay in increments. And that is really great for folks who are budget conscious or for folks who are needing that space to get to the final marker so that it's not stressful on a month-to-month basis also. And then the last one is just because if anything shows up, if anything happens, if things are going wrong, you've got an ally to work with when things are going pear-shaped, right? I mean, one of my biggest complaints was working with I used to book trips through cheaptickets.com as an example. And I got frustrated one year because I said, God, but I lost these tickets because the airlines made it so that we got left behind. And now I don't know who to call. And when I call them, they say, call the airline. And when I call the airline, I'm on hold for all my life. And with a travel agent, you've got someone who would say, no, you're my client. I got you. Don't worry about this. Let me take care of it. Let me take on that burden, right? And so for me, I find that it's easier to get other folks involved when you are busy, when you have lots of kids, when you have lots of work, or because maybe it doesn't bring you joy. I am a person that does not do things that don't serve me and that don't bring me joy. Me living in the weeds of travel, I do it even in my sleep. I wake up saying, I know where I'm going next.
Yes.
But there are a lot of people where the logistics, that sort of nitty-gritty detail is just not their thing, and that's okay. Because for some of us, it is our thing. Just like we go to the doctor and we say, doctor, patch me up, get me better. Is the same way I feel about travel and travel agents, right? Now, the downfall, or not downfall, but maybe not so positive that people will probably consider, is that a travel agent is going to probably charge you some sort of service fee.
Which is fair, right? I mean, they are providing a service.
Right, that's right. But for people who are super budget, conscious or on a very strict budget, that may be the difference for them, right? And so what I would say to those folks is, if you are starting a vacation like that, talk to your travel agent. Because sometimes we have an opportunity of playing around with numbers, of saying, look, maybe I can wait at this time, but maybe you can recommend me to other people. Because there are many of us who are in this out of labors of love also. And I am one of those people. I love humans. In my past life, I was an international HR person. So for me, it's all about like pouring into people and making sure that folks are, able to self-actualize and do the things that bring them the most joy. So I do come into the work that I'm doing with a level of heart and compassion, I think, for the everyday experience. But don't be afraid to ask that question, right? Which is like, hey, can you reduce it, or can you give me a little discount, and this is what I'm willing to do in exchange. Um, the other thing is around control. Some of our friends out in the world want more control and want to have someone who's answering the phone at every beck and whim and texting every beck and whim, because without that, maybe they're feeling uneasy. And that can be stressful for some people. Most of us are working with lots of different clients. Most of us are also traveling, right? Because this is how we're able to talk to our clients. And so, baking in a good 1 to 2 day turnaround time is great for setting your personal expectations around what to expect. But I do know that I've heard from other travel agents that the sort of accessibility thing becomes a challenge in some instances, depending on where folks are and depending on how they're lined up, right?
Right.
So personality wise, I think it can be a challenge for some personalities if they do need to have that attachment. So
Yeah. And I mean, travel agents also have their lives, right? And so, it's not like, and especially if you send someone to Europe and they're on a totally different time zone, and
yeah, that's
then you
right.
have to be realistic about when you could check in with your
That's
travel planner. But I think they would be there and they care about you and they want you to have a really great experience. Like, I think if I planned a trip for somebody, I would be very anxious to hear, in a good way, not anxious, scared, just anxious, excited about, how it went and how they enjoyed all the activities that we had selected, and did they like the place they stayed? Like, you're invested in it, right? And so you really want to make a great experience for your clients.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, so I have one more question, just kind of about traveling with kids. I'm wondering if you have just any general advice for making travel easier with kids, because we love talking about traveling with families here. You've given so many great ideas about planning out the best trip. So do you have just any ideas of things that have worked well with you and your son? Or I know you just traveled with nieces and nephews, just making things go a little bit more smoothly than they might.
That's right. That's right. I mean, I got a long
I thought you might.
It starts early from the time that you book the trip, right? Which is like, look, if you've got a kid that needs space, consider that when you're booking that trip. Some kids aren't lap kids. My kid has never been a lap kid. He didn't want to sit in the lap. And so what that meant was people around me were uncomfortable every time I tried to force that, right? And that made me uncomfortable in return. So look at your family composition and make sure y'all are comfortable. People laugh at me now because I'm like, I won't go anywhere without being first class. Not because I'm bougie. I'm not bougie at all. It's because traveling is so critical and important to me that my travel experience starts from the time I walk into that airport to the time I leave that airport. That means I want access to the lounges because my kid likes to eat, right? We like comfortable seating. We want access to bathrooms without having to be, I think too congested because of all of the airport mix-ups and stuff, right? So just think about your composition and make sure that you're thinking about, well, what's unique to my kid? What do I feel like I need? My son and I have always traveled just he and I, which means that I've had to be careful about being able to have accessibility to bathrooms where they were family bathrooms, right? Or if they were gendered bathrooms, not feeling like I was going to get pressured because I needed to walk him into the ladies' room. Because usually in the lounges, you've got single stalls even, or bathrooms that are just per person, right?
Right.
And so things like that even became really important for me. The other thing was around food. We are a snack family. I packed snacks in my backpack before we even go into the airport because oftentimes they don't have his snacks, right? My sister was laughing at me because she says, "You just pulling out anything." And I said, well, we got to this airport at 3 o'clock in the morning. And those of us who have been here before know this airport's not open yet. But the kids have been up since morning.
Right.
Hey, so,
you're like, yeah, I got some for all of you.
That's right. The other thing is making sure that technology is charged. If they are technology kids, make sure it's charged up, right? Like my son stopped crying the minute that I gave him something to chew on for his ears so that they didn't pop, and the minute that I put a TV in front of him of something that was comforting for him. We used to travel with his favorite blanket. One of my nieces showed up with her favorite dolphin called Dolphy. But it was a security blanket issue where she said, I feel like I'm ready to go on this trip, but not without Dolphy. And so I understood that, look, we all have different necessities there. Make sure that you connect with the hotels before you get there. As an example, if you need a roll-out bed, get it in there before you get there, right? And if you need to make sure that you get some downtime, get into a hotel or into an environment where you have access to children's clubs. That was the best thing that I ever discovered was when I could both pay for a nanny and pay for children's clubs.
Yeah.
Right? Because it was like, wait, mom needs a spa day. Wait a minute. I want to just sit there and look at the sun and wish I were bored enough. Like, so you can do a lot of that pre-planning before you get there. I even now go as far as pre-planning with the airlines. I tell them, look, my son has very big allergies, which means that I can't have any food put in front of him with tomatoes. Oh. Do you have anything that either I can buy or that you're going to give us that will suit his allergies? And if they don't, I'll get something before I get on that next flight to make sure he's got what he needs also. So I do try to do things like that. I travel light. We only travel with carry-on cases. We don't travel with anything checkable at all. Mostly because we don't need things lost, and also because I don't know if I'm ever going to have to put them on my back because something happens. But to carry them, I used to carry them all over the place. So a carry-on that I can put on that airplane. And what that also means, though, is I'm always checking to make sure that there's a washer machine available to me. So it's either I'm carrying soap where I'm hand washing because I'm in Central Africa somewhere, or I'm staying at a hotel that has laundry service, and I factor that into my budget so that I don't have to pack twice the amount of things just because I'm paying for 20 days. Right? So I hope that's helpful.
I loved all of those tips. Those were fantastic. I just love how proactive you are. Like you're thinking about you and your family and like the thing that like meeting their needs, anticipating the needs to just make it a little bit easier. And that's kind of what moms do, right? But taking it a little extra when you're going to be traveling.
That's it.
Okay, such good tips. All right, before I let you go, I love to ask 3 final questions to guests. So first up is, what is one of your favorite places that you have ever traveled?
My favorite place, one place. Oh no, I've got 2 top places. Okay.
You can tell both. Oh, Barbados. Okay.
Number 1 location at this point. My second is Senegal, West Africa.
Okay, I want to talk more about that. Maybe we need to do another podcast because I don't know anything. Okay, that's awesome. And then, what's one item that you love to take with you whenever you travel?
Take with me out or take with me when I'm coming home?
Like that you pack to take with you, like to make things better for you.
I always have a journal and a pen.
Okay.
Always a journal and a pen because I'm always thinking there's something always coming up or there's something I always got to write down.
I love that. All right. And now my favorite one is, where are you going next?
Woo! Well, we just booked our tickets back to Barbados.
Nice. Number 1 favorite. Full circle here on this. So love it.
That's right. We're going to Barbados, but my son has requested for his birthday South Korea and Australia. So we'll be going there in July also.
Wow. Sounds awesome. Okay. Well, I can't wait to hear more. So if people want to get in touch with you, where would be the best place for them to find you online?
Yeah, so folks can go to the website. I think you'll have it attached to your show also, but it's the travel365.com website, and that'll pull up cruise planners. That way it allows for them to play around with different trip options. There's deals running all the time, so they can find us there, or they can also reach me on email at rikimah.glymph@cruiseplanners.com.
Okay, great. And all of this will be in the show notes over on thistraveltribe.com, so check it out. And Rikimah, thank you so much for coming today. It was so fun to talk with you and to just get inspired and just think about like the basics that really can make a family trip so amazing.
I love it. Thanks so much for having me. I also appreciate it.
Yeah.